Power doesn't appear when money arrives. Power appears when the mind becomes disciplined enough for money to follow it. Most people reverse the equation. They chase wealth, hoping it will transform them, make them confident, respected, untouchable. But money doesn't create those traits. It amplifies whatever already exists. A chaotic mind becomes more chaotic. A fearful mind becomes more fearful. A powerful mind becomes inevitable. The psychology of power begins long before the first dollar is earned. It begins with understanding how people think, what they fear, what they desire, and what they obey. Money is only the visible part of the structure. Mindset is the architecture beneath it. Those who rise are not always the strongest or the smartest. They are the ones who understand human behavior, leverage, and perception. They know how to move when others hesitate. They know how to appear calm when others panic. They know how to shape the environment instead of reacting to it. Money follows mindset because mindset determines direction, and direction determines influence. When your mind becomes a force-focused, detached, strategic, wealth gravitates toward you like metal to a magnet. Rule 1. Power begins in the mind long before it appears in the world. Most people chase money as if it were a reward, but money doesn't reward. Money reflects. It shows the level of control you have over yourself, your impulses, your fears, and your environment. If the mind is chaotic, the wealth will be chaotic. If the mind is weak, the wealth will be temporary. And if the mind is hungry for validation, every dollar earned becomes a chain disguised as freedom. A Machiavellian mindset treats money as a secondary effect, never the target, because power doesn't come from income. It comes from clarity, from the ability to detach from noise, from seeing the invisible structures shaping behavior while everyone else is distracted by glare and glitter. This is why most people lose control the moment they touch wealth. Their internal world is unstable, so money amplifies the instability. They buy distractions, not leverage. They chase applause, not position. They spend to feel big because they feel small. They brag about income because they fear insignificance. They show everything because they control nothing. A Machiavellian thinks differently. He builds the inner architecture first. Discipline, perception, emotional distance, the ability to walk away, the ability to stay calm when others panic. These are the mental muscles that attract wealth without announcing the chase. Money follows a mind that no longer needs it to feel whole. That is the first psychological law. Money does not create power. Money gravitates toward it. Rule 2. Identity shapes wealth more than strategy. The average person thinks they need plans, tactics, or secret knowledge, but most people fail long before strategy begins. They fail at the level of identity, who they think they are, what they believe they deserve, how deeply they accept risk, and how much discomfort they can tolerate. A person with a fragile identity cannot hold power. They fear criticism. They fear loss. They fear being misunderstood. They fear standing apart. Money exposes these fears, then magnifies them. That is why the unprepared become louder, flashier, more insecure once they acquire wealth. They believe money will erase their doubts, but it only multiplies them. A Machiavellian identity is built on detachment, not apathy, not numbness, but the disciplined distance required to act with precision. He doesn't need praise. He doesn't need permission. He doesn't need reassurance. He doesn't need validation for his choices. His sense of self isn't tied to results, so he can pursue results ruthlessly. When your identity is not dependent on winning, you become far more dangerous at playing the game. Weak identities avoid risk because they think failure diminishes them. Strong identities embrace risk because they know failure teaches leverage. The Machiavellian moves with an inner confidence that is not emotional but structural. He does not say, "I believe in myself." He says, "I trust my ability to adapt." This simple shift changes the psychology of power completely. It turns pressure into fuel. It turns setbacks into intelligence. It turns chaos into territory. And most importantly, it turns money into something predictable, not mystical. People with unstable identities chase income. People with strong identities attract influence. Influence builds systems. Systems generate wealth. And that wealth remains stable because the person behind it is stable. Before money follows mindset, identity must be rebuilt. Power begins with who you decide to become when no one is watching. Rule 3. Control is more valuable than creation. Most people think wealth is created by effort. They admire the hardworking. They celebrate the ambitious. They praise the grinders. But effort alone rarely produces power. Hard work without leverage leads to exhaustion, not domination. A Machiavellian understands something far more important. Creating money matters less than controlling the conditions under which money is made. That single shift separates the powerful from the desperate. If someone else decides your schedule, your income, your approval, your opportunities, your comfort, or your survival, then it doesn't matter how much you earn. You are replaceable. You are predictable. You are controllable. And controllable people never rise. Money that depends on someone else's permission is not wealth. It is a reward for obedience. This is why people feel trapped even when they earn more. Their income rises, but their dependence rises with it. They have nicer possessions, but fewer choices. They have bigger salaries, but smaller courage. They have greater comfort, but weaker leverage. The Machiavellian moves in the opposite direction. His first objective is not income. His first objective is insulation, removing every channel through which another person can dictate his outcomes. He doesn't seek more money. He seeks more autonomy. He builds systems that can operate without him. He builds skills that cannot be replaced. He positions himself in environments where he becomes necessary instead of optional. This is psychological power. Not dominance through noise, but dominance through structure. When you control the flow of decisions, money becomes obedient. When you control the timing, money becomes predictable. When you control the alternatives, money becomes loyal. People call this luck. Machiavelli calls it design. The weak chase opportunities. The strong engineer them. The weak try to earn more. The strong make themselves harder to remove. The weak seek approval. The strong create dependence. And once dependence forms, money follows automatically. Control creates gravity. Gravity pulls wealth in. Wealth obeys gravity, not effort. This is the psychology of power most people never understand. You don't rise by chasing rewards. You rise by becoming the one who defines the rules of reward. Rule 4. Money follows attention, but power controls attention. Most people think money comes from talent, intelligence, or hard work. These matter, but only after one deeper force is secured: attention. Everything in the modern world competes for it. Ads, influencers, businesses, causes, markets. Everyone is fighting for the same limited resource. Yet, they never question who decides where attention goes in the first place. A Machiavellian does. He knows attention is the gateway to influence, and influence is the gateway to wealth. But he also knows attention works like fire. When you chase it, you get burned. When you control its direction, you stay in command. Most people beg for attention. They post to be noticed. They speak to be validated. They perform for applause. They rely on external energy to feel significant. But dependence on attention is dependence on the crowd. And the crowd is unpredictable. A Machiavellian doesn't seek attention. He engineers it. He places himself in positions where people must look, must listen, must consider his presence. Not because he performs, but because his silence carries weight. His movements signal intention. His choices alter outcomes. He becomes the center of gravity, not the performer on stage. And here lies the core psychological truth. People with no internal structure rely on attention to feel real. People with power use attention to reveal who else is real. Money flows to those who can direct desire, fear, perception, or narrative. That is why the ones who control platforms, networks, systems, and distribution channels always rise higher than the ones who create content inside them. Creators want followers. Controllers want leverage. Creators want applause. Controllers want data. Creators want virality. Controllers want predictability. You don't need the whole world to see you. You need the right people to feel your influence. Attention without authority leads to collapse. Authority without display leads to longevity. When you master the psychology of attention, money becomes a side effect. But when you chase attention emotionally, money becomes a punishment. Rule 5. Power grows through asymmetry. Most people build their lives around balance. Balanced effort, balanced risks, balanced rewards. They chase stability, which means they structure their lives so that gains and losses mirror each other. But stability creates ceilings. When your risk is limited, your leverage is limited. A Machiavellian plays a different game. He builds asymmetry structures where the upside belongs to him and the downside belongs to someone else. This is how empires, fortunes, and dynasties were built. Through ownership, not labor. Through positioning, not participation. Through systems designed so that his success multiplies while his losses remain contained. The average person carries full risk for small reward. The Machiavellian carries minimal risk for outsized reward. This is the psychology behind power. It is unfair by design. It is tilted by intention. It is created, not discovered. People say the world is unjust. They are correct. But what they miss is this. The powerful do not find asymmetry. They engineer it. They negotiate it. They position themselves where the rules bend in their favor. They choose environments where their strength matters more than their weaknesses. When you live with symmetry, you survive. When you build asymmetry, you ascend. Asymmetry is choosing ownership over participation, equity over wages, creation over consumption, influence over visibility. Most people are terrified of risk, but they misunderstand it. The Machiavellian does not gamble. He distributes risk downward. He absorbs control upward. He ensures that every move benefits him more than it costs him. 1,000 people working for security create the wealth that one person positioned at the top collects. The workers fear loss. The owner fears stagnation. The worker is motivated by survival. The owner is motivated by opportunity. This difference in psychology creates difference in power. Difference in power creates difference in income. Difference in income creates difference in freedom. Asymmetry is why the powerful stay powerful. They never trade time for money. They trade structure for control. Master this mindset, and money will always flow upward. Fail to master it, and you will always be the stability someone else leverages to rise. Rule 6. The one who controls alternatives controls behavior. Money doesn't control people. Options do. This is the deepest Machiavellian psychological principle and the most overlooked. People believe they act based on desire or logic. But most actions come from limitation. What they fear losing, what they can't afford to risk, what they believe is their only choice. If someone feels they have only one path, they will follow it even if it destroys them. The Machiavellian understands this. He doesn't need to manipulate. He doesn't need to coerce. All he must do is shape the options. He removes the exits that weaken his position. He expands the doors that strengthen his influence. He narrows the choices of others until the path he benefits from appears natural. People will choose it willingly, even gratefully, because they believe it's their idea. This is control without force, domination without noise, guidance that feels like freedom. If someone has only one employer, their loyalty is automatic. If someone has only one source of income, their obedience is predictable. If someone has only one opportunity left, their desperation becomes leverage. The Machiavellian builds environments where people need him more than he needs them. Not through threats, not through pressure, through design. He makes himself the safest option, the most stable option, the most rewarding option. And once people internalize this, they begin to filter every decision through the invisible question. What will happen to me if I lose access to him? That is psychological power. Power that doesn't raise its voice. Power that doesn't demand. Power that doesn't beg. A person with many alternatives cannot be controlled. A person with few alternatives will control themselves. The weak try to buy loyalty with money. The strong create dependency through options. When you shape the choices, you shape the outcome. When you shape the outcome, money comes to you naturally, not because people admire you, but because they rely on the world you designed. Rule 7. Money accelerates to those who do not hesitate. Hesitation is the most expensive psychological habit in the world. It destroys more wealth than ignorance, lack of talent, or lack of resources. People hesitate because they fear being wrong, fear being judged, fear being responsible for the outcome of their own decisions. But the Machiavellian understands that hesitation is not caution, it is surrender. The moment you hesitate, someone else moves. The moment you pause, someone else claims the opportunity. The moment you wait, someone else rewrites the conditions in their favor. Life rewards velocity. Power rewards decisiveness. Money rewards those who strike, while others analyze. This does not mean rushing. It means moving before the crowd understands what is happening. A Machiavellian calculates quickly, acts efficiently, and adjusts ruthlessly. He thrives in ambiguity because ambiguity freezes everyone else. He uses uncertainty as camouflage, moving while others debate possibilities. People confuse hesitation with intelligence. They think a decision becomes better if they stretch it across more hours, weeks, or months. In reality, the decision becomes weaker. Energy decays. Momentum fades. Confidence corrodes. The longer they wait, the more fragile they become. A Machiavellian does not wait for perfect information. He knows it does not exist. He acts with partial data and strong conviction, then adapts faster than others can reconsider. The psychological advantage is immense. When you act early, even a small move creates disproportionate power. When you act late, even a big move collapses under its own weight. Money flows to those who create momentum. Hesitation kills momentum. Momentum kills competition. To hesitate is to let someone else define your future. To decide is to seize ownership of it. And ownership is the first currency of power. Rule 8. Power is sustained by emotional discipline, not emotional suppression. People misunderstand strength. They imagine a powerful person feels nothing, cares for nothing, reacts to nothing. But suppression is not strength. It is fragility disguised as stoicism. Suppressed emotion leaks out through anger, panic, compulsions, or irrational decisions. A Machiavellian does not kill emotion. He channels it. He converts it into strategy. He treats emotion as energy that can be directed, not denied. Most people are controlled by their emotional state. They buy when fearful. They lash out when insulted. They retreat when anxious. They accept less when desperate. They quit when frustrated. This predictable emotional volatility is what allows them to be manipulated. A Machiavellian does the opposite. He studies his emotional responses. He identifies their triggers. He uses the information to anticipate his own weaknesses. When anger rises, he examines it. When fear appears, he evaluates it. When desire intensifies, he channels it. He remains aware but not overwhelmed. Responsive but not reactive. Stable but not static. His power comes from understanding the shape of his emotions so thoroughly that no one else can weaponize them. Emotional discipline gives you two advantages. 1. You become unpredictable. Predictability is vulnerability. When your reactions follow a consistent pattern, others can manipulate you like a game piece. 2. You gain clarity under pressure. Most fortunes are made when others panic. Most opportunities appear when others retreat. Emotional discipline allows you to see clearly during chaos. People follow those who remain calm. People trust those who remain grounded. People invest in those who remain stable. Power requires emotional gravity. Money gravitates to those who project certainty. A Machiavellian does not hide his emotions. He governs them. And through that governance, he governs outcomes. Rule 9. Control information and you control interpretation. People behave according to the stories they believe. Not the truth, not the facts, the stories. This is the foundation of psychological power, narrative control. If you shape the information people receive, you shape the meaning they attach to events. And if you shape meaning, you shape behavior. Most people assume they think independently. They do not. They think within the boundaries of the information presented to them. The Machiavellian understands this instinctively. He does not push people. He guides perception. He does not argue. He frames. He does not persuade. He limits the available interpretations. Information does not need to be false to be powerful. It only needs to be arranged strategically. Show people the same event from a different angle, and their conclusions change. Remove one detail, and their emotions shift. Add one implication, and their behavior transforms. This is the mechanics of narrative. You cannot control people directly, but you can control the viewpoints through which they interpret the world. The Machiavellian uses silence as information. He uses timing as information. He uses scarcity as information. Every action broadcasts a message, even inaction. Powerful people communicate through implication. The weak communicate through explanation. When you reveal everything, you erase your mystique. When you reveal selectively, you create curiosity. Curiosity creates influence. Influence creates wealth. Control the narrative, and money becomes magnetized to your position. Lose the narrative, and money becomes allergic to your presence. Rule 10. Power compounds when you eliminate the need for permission. Permission is the invisible chain that restrains the majority. They wait for approval from employers, friends, family, society, culture, or authority. They move only when someone else confirms the path is valid. But permission is a psychological trap. By waiting for it, they admit someone else has the right to dictate their trajectory. A Machiavellian refuses to ask for permission. He gives notice by taking action. He launches without validation. He builds without applause. He moves without consensus. He chooses without justification. The world quietly respects those who do not request approval. Even if they resist at first, they eventually adapt to the reality created by the decisive one. Permission-seeking destroys momentum. Permission-seeking weakens posture. Permission-seeking reveals insecurity. A Machiavellian moves first, then shapes the environment to legitimize his move. This is how leaders rise. This is how innovators disrupt. This is how dynasties begin. Psychologically, people follow those who appear to have authority over themselves. If you cannot rule your own decisions, you cannot rule anything else. If you wait for permission, you will always work under someone who never did. Money flows to initiators. Power flows to self-validators. Respect flows to those who define their own boundaries. When you eliminate the need for permission, you eliminate the ceiling others place above you. And once the ceiling disappears, ascent begins naturally. Rule 11. He who masters environment masters outcome. People underestimate how deeply environment shapes behavior. They believe their willpower defines their results. They believe mindset exists independently from surroundings. But mindset is not created in isolation. It is shaped by what you repeat, what you tolerate, what you see daily, and what your environment rewards or punishes. The Machiavellian understands this better than anyone. He knows people are not driven by strength. They are driven by structure. He does not try to force discipline. He builds an environment where discipline becomes the default. He does not try to motivate himself. He builds surroundings where motivation becomes unnecessary. This is why powerful individuals choose their environments with precision. The wise surround themselves with ambition, competence, and upward pressure. The weak surround themselves with comfort, distraction, and emotional indulgence. Your surroundings dictate your standard. Your standard dictates your actions. Your actions dictate your fortune. The Machiavellian removes the elements that dilute focus. He eliminates the people who drain certainty. He avoids the spaces where small thinking is normal. He intentionally designs a life where high performance feels natural and low performance feels foreign. Most people ignore this rule and rely on willpower, but willpower is not scalable. Environment is. A room full of wealthy thinkers makes wealth feel logical. A room full of fearful thinkers makes failure feel inevitable. The Machiavellian knows the subtle truth. Environment is a psychological authority. It shapes your identity. Identity shapes your decisions. Decisions shape your destiny. And because he controls his environment, he controls the invisible forces that guide outcomes. Money follows him because he moves in landscapes built for money. Power follows him because he creates the surroundings where power thrives. When you master your environment, you stop fighting yourself. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop asking who you want to become. You become it by immersion. Rule 12. Wealth accumulates to those who think in decades, not days. Impatience is the psychological signature of the powerless. They demand quick results because they have no internal foundation. They desire speed because they lack vision. They want the reward without the arc, the prize without the process, the outcome without the timeline. A Machiavellian thinks differently. He leverages time the same way others leverage credit or labor. He plays the long horizon, knowing the world is built for those who outlast, not those who outshine. He understands that every major source of wealth, ownership, power, influence, mastery, compounds slowly, then suddenly. It grows beneath the surface until one day it appears inevitable. The ordinary mind seeks dopamine. The Machiavellian mind seeks dominance. He does not chase every opportunity. He chooses a few and reinforces them relentlessly. He does not constantly pivot to escape boredom. He uses boredom as clarity. He knows repetition builds mastery, mastery builds leverage, and leverage builds dynasties. Most people sabotage themselves because they change direction too often. They abandon strategies before they mature. They destroy momentum by switching identities. They trade a decade of greatness for a week of novelty. The Machiavellian is patient, but not passive. He acts aggressively in the short term. He waits strategically in the long term. This duality is his advantage. The world belongs to those who stay the course while others chase distractions. Every empire is built by someone who refused to restart. Every fortune grows in the shadow of consistency. People mistake patience for slowness, but true patience is violent discipline stretched across time. It is the art of holding a line while others collapse. It is the mental steel that prevents impulsive retreat. Money flows to long-term thinkers because the world rewards duration. It rewards stability. It rewards consistency. It rewards those who do not break under the slow pressure of progress. When you think in decades, not days, you bypass 99% of competition without confronting them. You win by lifespan, not by speed. Rule 13. To become unavoidable, become irreplaceable. Every form of power, wealth, influence, authority boils down to one core idea: irreplaceability. If you can be substituted, you can be ignored. If you can be duplicated, you can be underpriced. If you can be found elsewhere, you can be dismissed. The Machiavellian, therefore, builds himself into something rare, a person whose value cannot be easily traded, copied, or moved. Irreplaceability begins with competence, but it does not end there. Plenty of competent people are replaceable. Irreplaceability comes from combining abilities, insight, leverage, and positioning in ways that create a unique advantage. Most people specialize in a single lane and become predictable. The Machiavellian integrates multiple lanes and becomes untouchable. Irreplaceability forms when you possess information others do not, can solve problems others fear, see patterns others miss, connect dots others overlook, build networks others cannot enter, influence outcomes others cannot reach. You become the hinge upon which a system depends. And when systems depend on you, money does too. Irreplaceability is not arrogance. It is strategic rarity. Be so valuable that your absence is a threat. Be so uniquely positioned that replacing you requires multiple people. Be so deeply embedded that removing you breaks the mechanism entirely. This level of psychological power produces an unavoidable effect. You stop chasing money. Money chases you. Why? Because systems, people, institutions, and networks all compete to keep someone irreplaceable within reach. Power is not held by the loudest voice or the strongest fist. It is held by the one whose presence stabilizes the environment. The Machiavellian does not scream for importance. He becomes structurally essential. And once you are essential, every door opens in your direction. Money follows mindset, not because mindset magically attracts wealth, but because mindset reshapes perception, behavior, and structure. The Machiavellian mindset is neither moral nor immoral, it is architectural. It builds frameworks, systems, and psychological advantages that tilt reality in your favor. Weak minds chase wealth. Strong minds create conditions where wealth has no choice but to appear. Power is not a product of luck. Power is a product of construction, and construction begins in the mind long before it appears in the world.